me to the Antietam battlefield. September 17th, 1962. Took place. It was the bloodiest one-day battle in U.S. history. 23,000 American soldiers, Confederate and Union troops, were wounded, killed, or missing in action. So I'm going to take you around, take a look at some of the battlefield. It's been expanded, kept up to look a lot like it did back in 1862. So let me take you around, and we'll head over this way. 5 days after the battle, photographers arrived. We're taking pictures of the dead where they had died. Behind me is the Dunker Church, and there's a famous photo that is coming up here that is the first photograph of war dead at where they fell. So it really brought home to people just what war really was. It wasn't this romantic thing, it was death and destruction. So one interesting thing is that church behind me was founded by a German pacifist sect. So because it was a white church against the dark woods, it was a landmark used by both forces, and the Confederates set up their artillery along this ridge, and the Union was back that way. There's an area back there, it's 24 acres, and then from 6 a.m. till 9 a.m. an American died every single second. 10,000 were shot and wounded or dead in that cornfield, a little 24-acre cornfield. It's sort of horrific when you think about it. Well, let's go take a look at the church. Now, back on that day in September 1862, these trees were not here. This was one big open pasture. The Union forces were coming from this direction, from the farms, and you can see how the terrain is rolling. Over here, see that line of fence rails? It's actually two lines. There's a road through there that was called the Sunken Road. It had been used so much that it eroded down. It was a trench. Notice how it sort of disappears? You can't really see it? Well, if you're walking down there, you can't see it till you're about 25 yards away. 2,000 Confederate soldiers were in that natural trench. 10,000 Union soldiers crossing this field in rows. As they came along, they couldn't see what was ahead of them till they crossed that little bit of a ridge, 25 yards away, point blank range. Confederates opened up, wiped out that whole first line pretty much. The next, for about 3 hours, those 2,000 held off these 10,000 and inflicted a massive amount of casualties. Next, I'm gonna go over. There's an observation tower that'll look at that bloody lane. We'll get a look from that direction. Well, as you can see behind me, the road is quite sunken in, natural-made trench. You can see the hillsides where the Union came over. This goes quite a ways up to that observation tower where I'll go next. We'll get a real good overview. But you can imagine 2,000 Confederates or 2,200 Confederates lining this here trench, Sunken Road, and having the Union come up over that rise 25 yards away. You got perfect cover. They're right up there on the hillside, worst possible way for them to come in. When they were able to, like I said, decimate the Union forces coming this way, eventually what happened is a small part of the Union forces were able to flank them, get at the end, and fire down the lane. Well, there's nowhere to go. You go up this way, you got Union forces that way. The Irish Brigade was coming, and they kept pounding at it. Eventually, some of the Confederates left to try to flank the flankers. The other Confederates saw them taking off, decided something was happening down there, and they took off running too, and basically gave this up. When the photographers got here and photographed this, they could, I'll show you that photo now, but it was said that you could walk from one end of this sunken road to the other, and your feet would never touch the ground. You'd be walking on dead bodies. Union, Confederate, just an amazing thing. And this was only for a few hours of that day-long battle. So let's go up to the observation tower and we'll get a good overview. This is what it looked like afterwards. I said bodies one end to the other. So okay, you can see down below me, behind me, this is the lower bridge. In the afternoon, on the day of the battle, there was about 500 Georgian sharpshooters up here on this top of this cliff, and General Burnside sent his troops to try to cross that bridge. As you can imagine, there was a shooting gallery, basically. The Union forces eventually took cover behind that stone wall, and were firing back at the Confederates up here on the bluff, on the cliff anyway. Eventually, now the soldiers, when they went into battle, only were issued 40 rounds of ammunition. So eventually, these 500 Georgians were running low on ammo. Lee had committed all of his reserves everywhere else by that time. There was no place for them to, nobody to resupply them, to get them more ammo. They could have kept holding out. When the fire slackened from here, the Union soldiers over there behind that stone wall realized they didn't wait for officers' orders. They just realized that they could possibly get across the bridge, so they stormed across and fought their way up the hill. The Confederates took off, headed back to the Harper's Ferry Road, and to wait for the next thing to happen. So it looks like, you'd think, why didn't they just ford across? This is pretty swift current, pretty deep, deeper than it looks. And again, you got the Confederates up here on the hill shooting. There is a ford down this way. Some Union forces did cross that ford and come up, but by then the other forces had come across the bridge and had driven off the Confederates at the top of the hill. So, can you imagine coming across that field, sitting up here just picking out targets? Because it wasn't a whole lot. Those trees weren't there. I got a picture I can show you this. As you can compare this photo to what's here at present day, the bridge, we would be over that way just a little bit. But see, all those trees over there didn't exist. It was a big open field. So you would have had Union forces coming up and the Georgians up here watching them come. All right.